Because everything is connected with the body in the golf swing, when you open up the hips and you open up the chest, usually what you will see is the hands will want to work around the body in the direction that the body is rotating. Okay. Now, the concern I have is that what you're going to see really soon here is that for a large majority of your takeaway, you have a very, very little amount of hip rotation. Well, because you don't load the hips very well early in the takeaway, the hands naturally will not want to work around you. And so what you are going to see is the hands actually disconnecting and working out and away from your body early in the takeaway. So if we leave a circle where the hands are and we show you the takeaway movement, your hands work just completely out and completely disconnected away from you. You keep the club head outside the hands, which, okay, sounds like a good thing. Like, there's no concerns there aesthetically. It might be a little bit too outside, but it's not like you're rolling the club head inside, which is a far more common problem with higher handicappers. The club face looks plenty closed. Obviously, through the amount of bowing that you're doing with the wrist, you're going to shut the face down. But to me, the issue really, again, at the end of the day, lies within the restricted hip turn. And the reason being is because once these hands start to work out and they're going to start to work up, they're never going to get around your body enough. So by the time we get to left arm parallel right here in your backswing, number one, the hip turn happening so late is a big reason why these hands aren't in a deeper position in your backswing, meaning why they're not as around you enough. Okay, so these hands here by this point are just way too far out in front of your body, and they need to have worked way more inside by this point. But that would have happened naturally if we get your hips opening up early. You won't have to feel like you're shoving your hands and arms around your body. I don't want it to be something that's very uncomfortable to you. We just need to open up the hips earlier to influence the hand path into a deeper position earlier, okay? Now, as you continue up, because the hands disconnected and work really outward, now you're stuck in a situation where these hands just never really get around you enough. So by the time you get to the top of your backswing, your arm plane is going to be quite significantly up above the shoulder plane. And these hands never really get far enough behind you. They're arguably over the toes of your feet. That is one of the major problematic pieces that we see within your golf swing. And again, it's not like I'm just going to tell you to get your arms in a flatter position because you're just going to shove them across your body later, and I can't guarantee that you're going to go about it in an efficient way. What I want you to do, and what we're going to look at closer together, is creating a bigger hip turn and a bigger torso rotation earlier in the backswing to naturally influence the hands around you. That way, we're not actually putting any sort of focus on the hands themselves. They're going to change as a byproduct of the improved hip rotation. The second thing, although the club stays outside the hands early, for the second half of your backswing, you create a lot of rotation of your forearms to the right, meaning you're rolling them open towards the trail side. This is another big problematic piece. And the reason being is because when you add this forearm rotation towards that side, the shaft angle is going to get super, super flat on you. So now you have a combination of elements here that are really creating problems. You don't load the hips very well, and even when you do load them, it happens way too late, okay? That is penalizing your hand path, which is going to cause your arm plane to get too tall in your backswing and not organically work around you enough. Then you have a lot of forearm rotation towards your trail side to the right for the second half of your backswing, and that's going to get the shaft super flat or super laid off in this scenario. So by the time you set the club at the top, you have created an environment here that is going to be almost impossible to get this club coming down in a shallow position. In fact, the only way you're ever going to allow yourself the ability to swing from the inside is by compromising the way your body moves on the way down. Meaning, if you take this exact same backswing that you have right now, and you just simply try to rotate your body without trying to do anything differently, what's going to happen is these hands are going to get way out in front of you, and this club is going to start to tip over into a steeper position. So what happens is now there's no longer this freedom to rotate through the ball. You even sent me a rehearsal of you trying to rotate as a pre-shot routine. It's just not going to work. You can do all the rehearsals you want before hitting the ball. If you get back into this position here, this club's going to want to steepen on you. And you will see just that. Like, as this club starts to go towards the late stages of your backswing and into the transition, you can see how this club goes from a very flat position here to one that starts to tip over towards a much steeper position. So now, as you're coming down into the ball, number one, the hands are starting to work a little too far out in front of you. But number two, which is very problematic, this shaft angle is starting to intersect way too much over the right shoulder, and it's not going to lay down nearly enough. There's not nearly enough of a shallowing taking place here. In fact, this club is holding its same angle. And the only reason it's holding its same angle is because your spine is starting to come out of the shot. So we take a look again. Look at your spine here. I put a line down the edge of your back, down your spine. We look at you coming into the golf ball, and you can see the amount of early extension you're creating, or just excessive amount of extension in general, right? So your spine completely comes out of the posture that you were in, your head completely comes out of it, and then we see that same release pattern we're talking about, which is very vertical, very towards the target. The only way to get rid of this, the only way to allow your body to move into a better position, we need to get this club coming down on a shallower plane, and we need to get the hands coming down a little bit more inside. The only way for us to do that, we need to change the structure of where you get to at the top of the backswing. In order for us to change the structure at the top of the backswing, if we keep tracing this backwards, we need to clean up your starting point of your takeaway. We need to get the hip turning way earlier. We need to get these hands working more around you organically way earlier. And then we clean up the late forearm rotation that you're adding here through the second half of your backswing, so that at the top of your swing, we get you loading a lot bigger and a lot more into this right hip, and that would require some amount of losing flex to this back knee. That would help us get the arm playing naturally a little bit more around you without you feeling like you're shoving the arms there. And then we change the forearm rotation you're doing to get the club more down the plane line. If we can do that, you would get the club coming down into a shallower position almost on its own without you needing to manufacture anything on the way down into the ball. And that alone now creates an entirely new environment in your swing where you'd be able to rotate through it. But the starting point of that is really cleaning up the structure of the backswing that we're looking at.